Hello and welcome back to Great American Underdog, where you can hear real stories of strength and success from real life underdogs. Some people talk about leadership, others actually live it in the highest stakes environments imaginable. My guest today is a former Navy SEAL, FBI special agent, the creator of the Ice Cold Leader methodology, and author of Ice Cold Leader, Leading from the Inside Out. But beyond all the titles, he's a loving husband, father, and someone who's faced real adversity and built a real system to overcome it in business and in life. For 20 years, he battled the effects of a traumatic brain injury without knowing there was a cure. His journey from the battlefield to recovery and now to helping others lead with clarity, resilience, and purpose is nothing short of incredible. Today, we're diving into his hard-earned lessons on leadership, emotional awareness, and pushing past limits, even when the odds are stacked against you. If you're someone who's looking to level up in life, navigate challenges, or just learn how to take control back in high-pressure situations, this episode is for you. It's my honor today to welcome Errol Doebler.
Marvelous Ron Marvo. It is my honor to be here, and that was the best introduction. I've been on hundreds of podcasts. That was the best introduction I've ever seen. That just thorough, rehearsed. I would expect nothing less. So I'm privileged to be here with you, and hopefully we can add some value to your audience.
Absolutely, man. And again, the pleasure's all mine. Just being able to work with you over the last couple of years in business and learn from you as well between your Ice Cold Leader methodology. I'm excited to share it with the audience too. And I just want to start going back a little bit, hit the rewind here and let everybody know a little bit more about you, Errol, and your background. So talk to me a little bit first about, where you're from, where'd you grow up, and how did that eventually translate into you deciding that you wanted to become a SEAL?
Well, I'm a native New Yorker from Long Island, and that's something that I tout every time somebody asks me, well, "Where are you from?" I live in Colorado right now, but I'm always like, "Well, I'm originally from New York." New Yorkers just feel the need to tell everybody they're from New York, especially I feel like Long Islanders. So that's where I'm from. I grew up there, born and raised. Left after high school to go to the Naval Academy. Um, you know, as far as the impact, the Bay Shore, the town I'm from, and Long Island in general have a ridiculous history of producing Naval Academy graduates and more specifically, Navy SEAL Naval Academy graduates. It's weird. And I was kind of at the front end of that cycle. Um, so I don't know what's in the water there, but growing up on the water, Long Island is, there's some very fancy dancy places, but by and large, it's blue collar, lunch pail, working class, tough, right? Because it's crowded, so you got to fight for space, fight for time to talk. So there's a general mentality that comes with that, and then being on the water, you surf, you boogie board, you go to the beach, you hang out on the water. And even if you're a fisherman, right, there's something about people who hang out on the water that's a little different. And so all of those things combined somehow brings me to the Navy SEALs. And the SEALs are very much the same way. Well, what's the difference between Green Berets and Rangers and Delta and SEALs? My answer is always the same: the water. The water's the difference. There's just a uniqueness about SEALs when it's in comparison to other special operators. A little more laissez-faire, a little more laid back, a little more, hey, dude, come on, with the military stuff, for better or for worse. So I don't know. I didn't really come from a huge military family. My uncle went to the Naval Academy, but it wasn't really a big influence on me. My dad was drafted, in between Vietnam and Korea, or whatever it was after Korea. I don't know. So it wasn't anything like that. So there's not really a great explanation as to my upbringing and then moving to the Navy SEALs, other than it just seems to be catching on in that part of the world. So who knows?
Yeah, well, like you said, you kind of led that effort out of Long Island, which is kind of funny that you say that. We don't know why certain things happen the way they do. especially where like a lot of, SEALs coming out of Long Island, who would think specifically, but I guess, you do have Jones Beach and you got the water out there. My mom's a Deer Park native. So I'm familiar a little bit. So was it something, I guess, just inside of you, Errol, that you just felt like this feels right, more or less?
Well, for the SEAL teams, so I'll tell you a little bit. So, like I said, my neighbors went to the Naval Academy, or the dad and one of the boys, and they had given me when I was young, and they were kind of like big brothers, pseudo big brothers to me, or de facto big brothers, not pseudo big brothers. And there was just a kind of a Naval Academy pamphlet. It was more like a book, and whatever. Somehow I got my hands on it. I was just flipping through it, and I don't know, what was I, sixth grade, something like that. I was young, and now, mind you, this is 1980. I don't know, right? So there's no internet. There's nothing like that. And there's this one page, and it's really a quarter of a page, and it's got a picture of a bunch of guys in those silly little UDT shorts, right? They're not geared up with their weapons. They're just in that. They're just kind of sitting there. And there's this very nebulous description about Navy SEALs. I'll never forget it. And I remember thinking, who are these guys? This description doesn't make very much sense, but something feels cool about this. So I went to the library, got on like the card catalog or whatever the hell it was. Where you spin the news articles around?
Right. Yeah. The news reviewer, whatever that is.
Hell, that thing is. And I just researched, like, who are Navy SEALs? There was like one article, and it was equally as vague about who they are, what they had done. And just for some reason, that stuck in my head. So fast forward, I didn't have aspirations to be a Navy SEAL or anything like that. And when it came time to go to college, I was, my lacrosse coach said, "Hey, senior, where are you going? Where do you want to go?" Right? Because I was a pretty good lacrosse player. And I was like, I don't know, the Naval Academy? It just fell out of my mouth. Like, we'll get the coach down here and get him here to look at you. And they did. They came and scouted me, and I ended up going to the prep school. And then once I was in the system, all of it bubbled back up. Like, okay, well, what do you do after you graduate? I'm like, oh, Navy SEALs. That's right. This is where these guys. And then it locked in. So then you learn more about it. There's now Navy SEALs there who will counsel you and talk to you. And ironically, the Navy SEAL who was one of the advisors at the Naval Academy at the time was from Bayshore. I grew up with his sister. So it was pretty weird. So that was it. There was a bug planted, and I think inherently it was in me, but there was nothing just overt, right? It wasn't. And then once I got to the Naval Academy, then it became an obsession. Like, no, this is definitely, because you vacillate when you're there. You're like, well, maybe I want to be a Marine. Hey, maybe I want to be a pilot, right? There's all sorts of things, but at the end, it always came back to being a SEAL, and then it took hold. And there was just no way in my mind I wasn't going to become a Navy SEAL.
Yeah, that's incredible, man. Just like you were saying, so you're in the prep school and you could go all these different avenues, and then that paragraph inside that pamphlet when you were in the library kind of just clicked in your brain. And then I'm sure that as you were in the prep school, you started learning some things like, through reading your book, Ice Cold Leader, Leading from the Inside Out. I learned that SEALs, were first introduced with the Battle of Normandy.
Yeah.
And I never recognized that it went that far back, and the strategic effort that they had done in order to get a successful pathway for the Allies storming the beach, is just truly remarkable. And again, that use of the water to, get there in the first place.
It's a great, and people don't, the history of the SEAL teams is really, really special. And again, when you realize it starts way back then, to say, okay, we've got this thing we need to do. We need to literally save the world. And to do that, we need to take the beaches of Normandy. And we've got tens of thousands of ships and boats. We've got all the Allied forces, right? We've got the American, we've got everything except how do we clear the barriers to get all of our resources on there? We need to find a bunch of psychopaths who are willing to swim in under the nose of the Nazi army,
Wow.
place the explosives on these barriers, and then set them, and then just get to the beach and hang on.
Yes, yes.
Like that was the plan. Okay, make sure you blow these things up. Like, okay, well then where do we go to get saved? You really don't. You got
Figure it
to
out.
you got to figure it out. And then people are like, okay,
Hmm.
that's when we talk about culture, right? That's it. What's the culture? Like, I don't know what I just described, whatever label you put on that, but that's the person we're looking for. And it just continued to grow and grow and grow. So yeah,
Sure.
it is a culture to be proud of. And I'm proud to be of the history.
No doubt about it. Was there early on, Errol, was there a specific individual from a leadership standpoint that really took you under their wing, or were you more kind of figuring it out and navigating on your own?
Yeah. So yes and no. One of the things that I had always had a hard time with was asking for help. So the idea that I would look for a mentor wasn't in my wheelhouse, and that's wrong, right? But it's what it was. However, I didn't get a billet to Bud's training at graduation. I was on the ship first. I was what's called the surface warfare officer because there was only like 9 billets available for our class of 1,000, whatever it was. And there was a very strenuous process. And what they ended up doing, because part of it was based on an interview, part of it was based on a physical test, part of it was based on your grades, and then whatever else. So I was like, I'll be okay. I was a very bad student, and that's something again that I regret. I'm trying to now incorporate for my kids to be better students. And I see my son very much like me. He doesn't like it. But that said, so I had a terrible class rank. But I was like, I think the physical test and the interview will boost me up. I'll be able to get one of those billets. And then they moved it to 100% class rank. And I'm like, I'm effed. And it turns out like there was 9 billets. I ended up being 10. And I didn't get it. So to your question, was there somebody who had influence? So I'm staring now, mind you, I'm like 10 from the bottom in the class. Like my class rank was so low. And this is called service selection night. So there's parties like, at the Naval Academy, we have a big hall. They allowed us to bring in beer, right? It was, all very organized. By the time I had picked, not only was the party over, they had already cleaned everything up. It was like nothing had ever happened. Like, because I picked, and I would all go over to the party, and it was like, yeah, I guess it's over. So anyway, that's how. So now I know that I have to pick a ship because that's it. That's all left. And now I'm looking at the ships on the board to pick, and there's hardly any left. And one of the teachers, who was a captain in the Navy in '06, right, very high rank, was in there, and he liked me. And I don't know why, because I did very bad in his class. But, sometimes you just get that guy who's like, this kid, he saw something in me.
Yeah, diamond in the rough can be polished kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. And I'm staring and clearly despondent. And he came over and he said, "What's wrong?" And I just was honest. I'm like, I want to quit because I'm not going on a ship. I want to be a SEAL. And I don't know that I can bring myself, muster the energy to do this. And he was like, "I understand." He goes, "You can't quit." Right? He goes, that ship has sailed. And I was like, they can make me an enlisted man. I don't care. I'm not doing this. And he's like, "Okay, hear me out." And he saw the stubbornness in me. He goes, "You can get there. So first of all, there's some positivity. You can do it." He goes, "Here's what you want to do. It's going to seem counterintuitive." He goes, "Pick that ship." It was an oiler called the USS Monongahela, an oiler. And right when you're out to sea, ships need to refuel. Nagahila refuels all the ships, right? It's not glamorous, but it's an oiler is a high value unit, right? You've got the aircraft carrier. Yeah, you've got the aircraft carrier, you've got the oiler in a battle group. Everybody protects those two things, right? And and I was like, why would I want to be on that? He goes, because they're out to sea all the time. And I was about to pipe in and go, that's what I don't want. He goes, I know what you're going to say. I don't want to be out to sea. He goes, but if you want to be a SEAL, get out to sea as much as you can. You've got to suck it up. Get all of your surface warfare qualifications as fast as you can. And that will separate you for the literally dozens and dozens of people who are going to want a lateral transfer to the SEALs. He goes, if you get your pin as fast as you can and you get your command to support you, you can do it. And that was it. I was like, okay. And I got my pin in 9 months. It usually takes people 2 years to get their pin. And I went to my commanding officer, and people would say, don't tell them you want to be a SEAL, because they're going to be like, you don't want to be a surface warfare officer. They're going to blackball you. And I'm like, I have to tell them what I want. I have to, because I've only got enough energy to keep this up for so long, right? I've got to I'm giving them everything I got. So I went in to my commanding officer and I said, here's what I want. And I held my breath. And he goes, Errol, if you want to stay in the Navy, that's what we need. He goes, I will support you. He goes, I figured this wasn't for you, but you've done a really good job of doing the work. And now it makes sense to me. So he saw, like, this guy's different.
And if you didn't open your mouth, that doesn't happen.
Right. He's like, I don't think this kid loves what's happening, but he is actually doing the best he can. And he's a good young officer. And he said, I will support you in everything you do. And so I said, I got to get my pin. He goes, you're close. He goes, we'll make sure you get there. Now, why does that matter? I still had to pass the test, right? I still had to go through the whole thing. But what they did do for me was there was a couple of areas like engineering. I couldn't get it. I didn't love it, which is weird because the Naval Academy is a huge engineering school. And I just hated it. And he told the chief engineer, and I know he did because afterwards people told me, the chief engineer hated me, literally hated me. And he told the chief engineer, you ask that kid the basic engineering questions, and that's it. We don't care about anything else. As long as he can walk through the steam cycle and, all that stuff, that's enough. Leave him alone. Because that guy would have crushed me. He would have crushed me and I would have failed. And so it was that support, right? So when you ask, was there one person? It was that guy as I was staring up despondent at the ships that I had to pick from, who said, here's your path. That was it. Because if I didn't have that guy, I don't know what would have happened.
Yeah, those moments, Errol, I've had them in my own life, even with boxing. My family would always say, in a million years, we would have never pinned you to be a boxer. And it was a catalyst moment, not the same, but similar in terms of catalyst in my life that pushed me in that direction and changed the entire trajectory of my life. And it was really one person, one coach, that once I got into a boxing gym that told me, hey, you could do something with this. And again, that led me to Golden Gloves, that led me to coaching other people, and led me to where I am today as a human. Yeah. So those moments, they call them canon moments in the Marvel cinematic universe, or in the movie universe. They're canon moments for the special character where it was a pivotal experience for them. And I feel like that was definitely a canon moment for you.
Well, it was. And the sad part is, though, that guy, I can't even remember his name. I never saw him again. And he doesn't know what he did. Yeah. You know what I mean? And if there was a way I could ever find him and just tell him, because who knows? I try to help kids all the time, right? I work at the high, I help at the high school. I give them through a modified high school leader course. And and you never know.
Yeah.
And all I do is say, the people who helped me, and especially that guy, he doesn't know, and it's okay. Because he
Yep.
knew he was trying to do the right thing. He was trying to help, and he hoped it worked out. So,
Yeah.
I
And
wish
the
I could.
and I also believe in the universe. So maybe, he's seen you at this point somewhere online and like, great job, kid. He might be doing that. But
Who
uh,
knows?
either way, it brought you to where you are today. So now, you get through the basics of the engineering piece, you earn your badge, and then now, of course, the most popularized thing that everybody talks about when it thinks about SEALs is they think about buds training. So talk to me about how that was for you, and what did that portion of your SEAL career actually teach you?
Yeah. So it's kind of twofold, right? So past buds, the thing about buds is when you get to your SEAL team, they remind, because when you finish buds, you are like on top of the world. I can conquer anything. You get to your SEAL team, and there's somebody there. It's like their job to remind you, by the way, everybody here has been to buds. Nobody gives a shit, right? So whatever you think you did by getting through buds is the bottom rung of the ladder. So they quickly remind you you're not special because everybody here has done it. That said, which is again the beauty of the SEAL teams, right? Like we don't care. We kick ass going forward now. But anyway, so buds training. So there's like a 70% attrition rate at buds, meaning 70% of the people who join a class will quit, not get kicked out. Just say I quit. They don't really kick people out. You
No,
just quit.
you go
Um,
ring the bell, as you've
yeah,
told me before.
you go ring the bell. And so I was there, and I had what's called a winter class, right? We classed up in January. And I was there before that, which I won't bore you with. It was almost like I went through first phase before first phase actually started, and where like 60 people quit in 3 weeks. And again, it was this thing they were doing. That's it. When I officially classed up, it was a January class. And that means you go through Hell Week. Hell Week is like week 4 of a 6-month program. It's not at the end, right? It's not like, okay, we culminate with Hell Week. It's early. And that's where you get first phase. There's 3 phases. And first phase is where you get 99.9% of your quits. And there's actually a couple more weeks of first phase after buds. And so it's really, you're going to get most of your quits in that first 4 or 5 weeks. So we went through, buds was like in January, and in Southern California, first of all, the Pacific Ocean is always cold, right? And Southern California gets cold at night. It's beautiful during the day, but it gets cold. Well, it rained all week. Like we walked out. You start Hell Week Sunday night. I don't know if it's changed, but for us, start Hell Week Sunday night, and everybody kind of walks out there together, and it started to rain, and we were laughing at first, and then it kind of settled in, like, oh man, this. Mother Nature is not helping. Now, I will tell a story about before I went out there to get with the guys to walk out. I was in my room, and I was petrified because I had heard, and again, mind you, this is 1993. So I can't go online and see some videos and see what's like. You don't fucking know. You hear, but you literally don't know anything. And what my fear was, because you knew there was sleep deprivation, and my fear was, what happens if I'm so delirious, I quit without realizing that I quit? And I wake up in a nice warm bed, go, oh no, I quit. I was petrified at that. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get past this feeling. Because what they do tell you is if you're not sure if you're going to make it, you're not going to make it. You're just not. And I'll tell you a little bit about that. And I got so lucky, right? I have very strong faith. for some reason I keep it under wraps, not because I'm ashamed of it. It's just kind of the way I roll
I'm the
with it.
same way.
Yeah. Like I'm not, if somebody asks, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a
Of
Christian.
course.
Yeah, I know. But anyway, so I was like, all right, well, you got to pray. And I'm like, but I don't know what I'm praying for. Like, I still, you're just not sure. And then it hit me. I was like, no, when you're not sure about how you feel, when you're feeling scared, when you're feeling something, you're a leader. Go find somebody to help. Go find somebody to take care of. Be a leader. And all of a sudden, right? So I prayed for that ability to do that, right? All of a sudden, I was like, oh, no, I'm good. I'm good. There's nothing that is going to stop me. It was that little thing. So we started that class that we classed up with about 120. Now, this little thing that I'm being very sketchy about that happened a month before when I arrived at Buds, we had another 100 people and like 60 of them quit before we even started class. So we had already experienced a lot of quitters. And so we started the class with about 100, 120. And at the end of Hell Week, we were down to 10. So, and it was the weather, right? They would just be like, go get wet, right? So run in the ocean and just come to the beach and sit there. They just let Mother Nature take care of it.
Right.
Like they didn't even have to
abuse you over the long game of it,
right? They were like, I'll just sit there. And people would quit. It was so cold. And I just remember one night they stripped us down and just to our like jockey shorts, whatever the hell it was. And they called it the medical review. It's like the doctor you'd go in and see the doctor and he'd be like, are you okay? Whatever it is. And you're kind of thinking to yourself, oh, this is going to be a break. Well, no, you went and saw the doctor for like 30 seconds, right? And he checked a couple of vitals and then they just were hosing you down the whole time. And it was brutal. And then they'd be like, okay, get warm. And everybody would jump on top of each other, right? And I would be, I was proud of myself, right? If people started jumping on me, I'd be like, get off of me. I'm getting on the outside, right? I'm a leader. I got to be in the worst spot. And I remember one point, a guy goes to me, we were just so cold. And he's shivering. He's like, sir, I don't know if I'm going to make it. And this is the only time that I didn't give encouragement, hugs, whatever it was. I'm like, man, I got my own problems right now. You do what you got to do. Like, I had no bandwidth for helping him get through this.
You got to go ring the bell. Ring the bell.
I was like, I got my own problems right now. And he went and quit.
Wow.
It was, yeah. So Hell, I don't even know what the original question is, but that was the experience of Hell Week.
It was more or less what it taught you, Errol. And it sounds like more than anything, it's the mental game that they try to get you with to be like, when are you going to quit in here? Before, like, this quits before your body quits at times when people want to quit, right? They kind of fought, and that mind-body connection. And it's no different in boxing. Like, you've had people that walk in the boxing ring, and if they already quit here, oh, they're in for a night, man. You're either going to get knocked out, coach is thrown in the towel, etc. So I feel like the biggest thing that you kind of learn from Buds is that mental resilience of being able to push through and persevere through all of this kind of abuse, because they want to see who's left standing at the end of the day, and who's also, like you, wanted to get on the outside of the circle. Like, that mentality of being a leader, is important. So
no, it's 100% that. Everybody who goes to Buds is a physical phenomenon, right? Everybody could knock out 20 pull-ups. Everybody could swim 1,000,000 miles. Everybody could run like a deer, for days on end. Everybody was a stud. Okay. That's just the way it is. Why do you have 70% of studs quit? Because mentally there's something that's happening that they can't handle. And that's where it's the water that gets everybody. right? Um, so I'll give you another example. Before Hell Week, you do this thing called whatever they surf passage, and you get your big rubber boats, right? And you have your boat squad, and you get in, and you go out past the surf in the ocean. Now, Pacific Ocean, especially in the winter, that's a real deal. 10, 15 foot waves, right? Sometimes. So we were scheduled to do like a run or something. It was after lunch, whatever we were scheduled to do. And the surf was so big. The instructors go, we're changing surf passage. Be out here, in 10 minutes. And like, because we were out on the beach and looking at like, thank God we're not going to the water. And then they changed it. And you're like, so they're asking you to paddle your boats past this. So everybody's like, oh. So I was in charge, right? So I'm scrambling everybody, get your boats, this, that, and the other thing. And I've got one of the senior enlisted guys, one of the senior guys who's in the class, a student who I really relied on. He comes running up to me. He goes, sir, I need to talk to you. And I will never forget, his name was Pat. And I go, Pat, what the fuck? You see what's going on? Can it wait? Because, we were getting stuff together. I'm like, wait, you need to talk to me. And he goes, no, I'm good. I go, well, are you sure? He goes, yeah. And I go, okay. And so now we're going, and all of a sudden, like a minute later, I hear bing, bang, bang. And I go, everybody stop. I go, where's Pat? And they're like, he just quit. And I was like, okay, but we got to move on, right? So now the drill was after lunch and the end of the day, there's like still 3 or 4 hours of work, right? And they're like, okay, the drill is get out past the surf and then come back and your day's over. My boat got out at like 3:30. So it was like 3 hours of just getting smashed by the surf. So anyway, going to back to the mindset. After this is over, I go to Pat's room. And I go, Pat, Jesus Christ, you could have told me. I would have stopped, right? I would have got you through it. And he was like, no. He goes, I was just going to tell you as a courtesy. He goes, there's nothing you could have told me because I was not going to go out in that water. And I was like, okay. So again, the mindset, there is something, that's it. I'll give you one more story before we can go on to the next. But at the end of Hell Week, I had shin splints that were so painful. They like the last hour or so of buds, you got the boat on your head. They're kind of marching you around all the helmets. Now we've got like 100 helmets of the
because they line them up.
Who quit? Yeah, they line them up. You ring the bell and you put your helmet down, and so it gets very emotional, right? Because you're like, I made it, right? Whatever they do now is, but I remember thinking, I think my legs are going to snap in half. That's how bad my shin splints were. I literally was like, I'm pretty sure both my shins are going to snap in half. And my response to myself was, oh, well, because I'm not stopping. So there is a combination. There has to be a true desire. You can't not want, you can have the best mindset in the world, but you have to want something, right? And so there has to be that, right? You couldn't put me through a Hell Week of engineering courses, right? Hey, Errol, if you do this, you get $1 million if you do the Hell Week of engineering. My desire wouldn't be there. So my mindset wouldn't have helped. But again, to the bigger point, it is all mindset. It's all mindset. The physical stuff, is just physical.
Yeah, well, the desire piece, it's like you just made such a great differentiation between like I could force myself to do something through sheer will, right? Compared to I have the desire to accomplish this goal, and that being the real driver. Like you can will yourself through a lot of different things.
Right.
But when things get tough, if that desire is not there, like, and it gets real tough,
Yeah.
you're not going to have the mental fortitude to push through the same way. So there has
Yeah.
to be that combination. And you just kind of unlock that, I think, for the audience, to take it that next step further of like, well, if you know that things are going to be tough down a certain path, whether it's being an entrepreneur or whatever the case is, you want to perform at a high level as an athlete, there's going to be the tough. Just make sure that your why and your desire are what's really truly driving you at your core.
Yeah, because you'll never even be in a position to experience the tough if you haven't figured out. So again, entrepreneurship is a great example, and we talk a lot about the challenges of entrepreneurship, and one of the challenges, right, selling, right, and that's your breadbasket, right? And I lean on you and Sandy a lot for guidance there, but the amount of time it takes to properly sell is you can't underscore it. And the point I'm making is I don't like to sell. But so it's kind of go contrary to what I said. Like you have to love it to be able to endure certain things. No, no, no. It's just a part of the thing. What I love is being an entrepreneur and being my own boss and making money and guiding my family through it. That's what I love. And what Buds did teach me was I don't know that there's actually any limits to the pain you can endure to get to something you want, right? Those down moments we talk about in entrepreneurship, when people aren't paying on time, and now you look at your bank account and you're like, oh my God, can I buy eggs?
Yeah, what am I doing? What the heck's going on?
Right. And so that is a pain that we as a family and a business have endured, right? And we're learning from a business perspective how to avoid those deep valleys and those highs and lows. But again, there was one time that I said, I've got to pack this in, ice cold leader. And we have a great advisor who we talk to about various things, and she ultimately just ends up being a therapist for us. But that's what you need, right? That's a lot of times why people hire me. And I said to her, I was crying. I said, I think I've gotten to my end. These moments of not having money, I just don't think it's fair to my family. My wife was right here because me and my wife, as you well know, run the business together.
Right.
And her response was, well, she did a couple of things.
I live the same boat you do in that way too, Errol, just minus the kids. So that's coming.
it gets, right. So she said, well, look, let's look at your numbers, right? Your business has grown on an average of 20% year over year. She goes, that's unheard of. And I'm like, yeah, but it doesn't mean shit to me because of where I am right now. She's like, no, I understand. She was great. And here's what she said. She goes, okay, you've thought about quitting this and you've thought about what that looks like. And I was like, yes. It was almost like I was being defiant to her, like as if she had any, anyway, I was like, yeah. And she goes, when you picture quitting and doing something else, does it make you feel good or does it make you feel bad? And I was like, it makes me feel terrible. And I was like, gotcha. Got it. Right? Got it. Check. We can get through this. Because sometimes if you say, I'm going to quit this thing, and you're like, the weight of the world is off your shoulders, you made the right choice. Whatever it is you're quitting or moving on from, right? Doesn't need to be quit. And it was not that feeling. And I said to my wife, I go, how do you feel? And she's like, I feel the same way. It doesn't make me feel good at all. And then that was it. It was a reset. Like, no, I can get through anything. We will get this done. If we have to live in a cardboard box, we will live in a cardboard box and we will love our kids, right?
Yep.
And they'll be fine.
Yep. And they'll be super appreciative.
Yeah,
I get that so much, Errol, though, because obviously I live a very similar lifestyle as you in that way of the entrepreneurial world. And yeah, the thought of, to me, like I have unfinished business in what I'm doing, or the impact that you create for your family, but also for other people through what you're doing. Like you do leadership, we do business development, but what we both do is that we empower people. And there's something to that like I can't quit on the people that I'm therefore, like that leadership mentality, Errol, is like it's just ingrained in your brain. Like I'm not a quitter, and not just for the sake of not quitting, but I have something to give, and the impact that I have to give, it's I feel it in my heart. Like that, like she asked you, if you quit, would you feel terrible? Yes. Then it's not time. It might not ever
It,
be time to
it
quit.
might
You
not
know what
ever.
I mean? So I totally get that. And from, just to switch gears a little bit, transitioning to, your TBI, your traumatic brain injury. Like I'm sure when you were undiagnosed through that, which, I'm going to ask you to share what happened, like there were plenty of times I'm sure you wanted to quit on a level of, I want to X myself out of all of this.
You want to quit life.
You
You
want to
want to
quit
quit life.
life.
Yeah.
And there's something in you that said, no, keep going, whether it's God, the universe, you, a mix of both. But, this is for me, like a great transition for talk to me a little bit about in the audience of,
Yeah.
you suffered a traumatic brain injury while you were in the SEALs. Tell
Yeah.
me a little bit about, and the audience about what happened
Yeah.
specifically.
There's a couple, and they were dramatic. Um, the the long and short of there's two. Where do I start? There are traumatic brain injuries for military people who have never hit their head, just solely on the amount of ammunition they fired and explosives they've been around. Okay, and what happened to me were two operational injuries, and I could spend hours on telling the story, right? But I won't. I'll just give the high level stuff, right? The first one was we were entering a house, right, to clear the house. It was at night, and again, this is 1990. When did this happen? 1997, 1998, something like that. And you didn't operate in night vision. Like night vision was something you kept with you, and then when you got to your spot to surveil, you put your night vision on. We just weren't. Yeah, we weren't there to. They're like, you don't patrol in night vision. You don't operate in night vision. It was just a different. We just weren't. Whatever the technology, whatever it was, that's the way it was. So when you operated at night, you operated at night. Like, can anybody see? I can't see. And when you went into a room at night, you had a flashlight on your weapon, right? So you went in and then you hit the flashlight on your weapon, and then that's how you saw. So we were entering a door, and the first guy jumped to the right. And I remember he jumped very quickly and very non-tactically. And even then, because it's just you move fast, but things slow down when you get really good at it, right? Just like anything, just like boxing, right? Like, oh my God, the first time you boxed, like where'd that cross come from?
Yeah, yeah.
You get it long enough, you're like, oh, I see him cranking up his body for that. Here it comes, right? And there you see it. Same thing with operating. And so I remember thinking, wow, that's weird that he did that. And then I realized why. Because there was no floor on the other side of the door. So I took about a 10-foot plunge onto my head onto cement. Now, that fall took a quote unquote long time because you start to your life flashes before your yeah, and that's real. And it happened with the other one, and I was like, what?
Real quick, Errol, I've experienced that in a motorcycle accident.
Yeah,
Where just like I was flying through the freaking air. I hit a ton. I just remember how slow that felt, but could continue.
yeah, like I can't believe, like, how is this going to hurt? This is really going to be bad, right? And I remember thinking, what is waiting for me when I land? Like I envision broken glass and rebar. For some reason I had that in my head. Like I'm just going to be impaled by rebar and broken glass. This is going to be terrible. So anyway, I hit. Somehow I got up. Right, I had a huge gash. Guys could see my skull, but we put a patch over it. Finished operating, finished the training, and then took me to the hospital. That's just the way we did it back then. It's not right. It's not wrong. It's just the way it was. Just the way it was. I could go into, weeks later, I collapsed and had to spend a week in a hospital, and nobody could figure out why. And I had 3 spinal taps in a week, and there was blood in my spine coming in from my head. And everybody's like, what happened? I had forgotten about the fall. And when I went to the hospital, we were out of town and we came in all of our gear. And I introduced myself. I'm like, I'm Lieutenant Doebler. I'm the platoon commander for SEAL Team 1. And we're operating. Here's what happened. I need stitches. And you can't you can't document it. Now, I don't think today that would fly. Okay. But it did then. And they're like, come on in and we'll stitch you up. They're like, here's a receipt that you were here in case you need it. I'm like, okay, cool. So when this happened, right, when I was in the week with the hospital, everybody's looking through my medical record. They're like, what is going on here? So all of a sudden, that's the residual of hitting your head. But we just kept going. The next one was not long after that. We were on deployment.
The VBAS, right?
Huh?
The VBAS. Am I saying that right?
VBSS, yeah. Visit, board, search, and seizure, yeah. So we were on deployment, and we got tasked to do a visit, board, search, and seizure, which is a classic Navy SEAL operation. You're out at sea, and there's a big cargo ship, and it's got bad people on it going to a place it's not supposed to go with stuff on it it's not allowed to have. And, the higher ups go, who's out there? Doebler's platoon is out there. Okay, you're tasked with taking it down. We had a rehearsal day. It was a very dangerous situation with the weather. Again, I could go into the details, but the long and short of it is we have to hook a ladder up to the side of the boat that we're boarding. And it's a 30-foot ladder. When I was at the top, the ladder broke. And I took a 30-foot header back into the boat. So those are my two major injuries. Okay. Again, the stories around them, you've read the book. I think they're pretty entertaining, but they're also insightful.
People will have to get the book if they want the details.
You will have to get the book if you want the details of the story.
I'll include the link.
Yeah. So that's it. Now, at that time, traumatic brain injury, I don't even think it was a term. So I got medically discharged because I had lost function of my arm for a while because all the nerves in my arm had shattered and so on and so forth. And they were like, we don't know if you're going to recover. And I remember saying to them, I go, but nobody's talking about my head. I go, these headaches. And they might as well said, take 2 aspirin and call me in the morning. And I remember feeling so disrespected and so despondent because I didn't care about the function of my arms. I felt like they were going to come back. I'm like, this can't go on, though, these headaches. And I vowed never to talk about the injuries again because of the way the doctors treated me at that hearing. They literally said, what about my head? And they might as well have laughed me out of the room. So when you talk about the struggles of traumatic brain injury, I started to notice changes in my personality. I'm a very emotional guy, right? For better or for worse. And that's not bad. But what was happening was my emotions were getting amplified, 100x'd, and for no good reason, right? So in other words, anger, right? Somebody would be chewing on a carrot and the noise would bother me and I would lose my mind. Again, pig, say, can't you keep quiet with that carrot? And they're like, it's a carrot. Like but that's just an example, right? Just overblown, even happiness. Everything was extreme. I meet somebody for the first time on a casual introduction. Like I'd give them a huge hug, kiss on the cheek. Like, oh my God, I can't believe that. And they're like, whoa, you know what I mean? And it didn't happen all the time, but it was happening. And, it was kind of the genesis of the ice cold leader methodology, because I quickly started to realize you are getting out of control. And I don't know why, but you've got to understand how you're feeling before you act on that feeling, because you're starting to make some really, really bad decisions. And this is going to go down a bad place. So that was the genesis of my emotional awareness and recognition. Now, as I put all this together in hindsight, when I started the business, I was also like, okay, why was I so good and calm under battlefield conditions and stuff like that? Well, it was the same thing. It was the understanding of how am I feeling? I'm really scared and nervous right now. Okay, cool. But how am I going to act on that? And I can't retreat. I can't, right? Whatever it is, here's now the behavior I need to force myself to do. Be calm, be whatever it is. And that's where it started though. And I was just able to put it all together when I started the business. And so that's how I kind of started surviving this thing. Now, we talked a little bit about the effects of getting through that. It was not easy. And it was getting worse and worse. And I've just started sharing this story. It's weird because they start to come up. Because I remember I was on, I don't know whether it was on a podcast or I was talking to somebody. I don't know what it was, but it was recently. And I told this story. My wife was there, and I got done, and she goes, "You never told me that story." And I'm like, "Yeah, I kind of forgot about it." And so the story is just to show you that there's real struggle. I was getting so despondent, and at this point I was in the FBI.
Okay, this is like 2010ish.
No, even earlier, right? So I joined the FBI in 2003.
Okay.
So this particular incident, 2004, 2005, right? It wasn't, whatever. It was early because I remember, because I know where I lived. I remember where I lived. I was in Jersey City, and I lived in just a nice little studio, right? It was good, and
this is at the time you're working in Newark with the working on breaking down the gangs.
I was in the New York City office. I was just living in Jersey City, and I was working terrorism.
Gotcha.
I was working terrorism at the time, and I would be driving, right? Our office was in Manhattan. I'd have to go to Queens or Brooklyn or whatever it was. And I don't know if you've ever been on the Belt Parkway.
Of course. My father's from Brooklyn.
Okay. So Belt Parkway, right? There's not really a shoulder on the Belt Parkway, right?
Nope.
I remember one time I had a headache so bad that I couldn't see. And I'm on the Belt Parkway, and Belt Parkway, everybody's going 70 miles an hour, and it's like this narrow. And there was probably about a half a shoulder. And I pulled over, and I was like, if I get hit, I get hit. But I have to stop, and I have to sleep. I pulled over and slept on the Belt Parkway with, right? It was crazy, but I had no other choice. That's the stuff that was happening to me. I got home, and I remember I was crying. I was watching TV, and I was crying, and I was staring at a bottle of Jack Daniels and my weapon, my Glock 40. And I was like, this is bad. I hadn't drinking anything yet. And I remember I was scared. Sorry. And what wasn't on the table was not drinking. I was going to drink that bottle of Jack because it was the only coping mechanism I had at the time. So I was like, if I drink this, I might blow my brains out because that's how I'm feeling right now. So what I did was I took apart
You're making me emotional.
So I took apart my weapon, and I put different parts of the weapon in each part of the house. Somewhere in the cabinet, right? I took it all apart. And I was like, and then I started drinking, and I'm like, I hope I can't remember where I put the things. And if I do, I hope I can't put it back together. Obviously, I drank and woke up the next morning. And what was funny was I was like, where the fuck is my weapon? And I was like, it's like I had to go find it. It took me like hours to find everything. But that's a funny part of the story, but that's where I was. And that only happened once, and didn't get that dark every night. But man, I think about how lucky I got and what got me through that. There was the process, right? A way to move through this very consciously. But man, there was a lot of luck, and there was a lot of praying, And there was a lot of people, I do remember thinking, I've had so many people help me get to where I am. Doing this would be such a slap in the face to them. Right. And now I don't know, it doesn't matter if that's logical or not, but that was one of the things that went through my mind. Like, you can't do this. You didn't get here alone. You had people. I thought about that guy I told you about.
Yeah, you care, and well, you have a heart. That's your heart, Errol. You care about people and your journey and the people that have been part of that.
Yeah, you just can't let them down.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's a little bit about, right, the struggles of traumatic brain injury, and I'm giving you the highlight.
Yeah. And then
So,
Errol, I know that just from reading your book, then you meet a doctor and the doctor does the brain scan.
yeah,
Pick it up from there, because I feel like that was the moment where you went, oh, like
yeah,
there's something that was wrong and I didn't know about it. And it kind of maybe, hopefully it sounds like, gave you some clarity to
yeah.
on how to go forward.
Yeah. So the process, right? Emotional awareness, cultural awareness, all the things I share with my clients and I work myself, that was helping. Now, by this point, I'm married, right? And Jen's aware. And I didn't share. If she was sitting here, she'd be like, Errol really didn't share any of the stories with me. I know he got injured, but she didn't know the impact. So she started seeing me slip a little bit too. She started getting worried. And, now in hindsight, I know I had my whole family walking on eggshells because of how I could be sometimes, which is also in the extremes, which is also heart wrenching for me. But the process helped. I discovered Wim Hof, right? Cold exposure breathing, resetting the nervous system. My wife was like, that helps. Got to keep doing that, right? And so fast forward, we're literally at a party, right? Like a random party. People you don't know are there, right? I hadn't been to one of those in forever. And I met a guy who was a doctor and he specialized in traumatic brain injury, which at the time I had vaguely heard of the term. This is only a few years ago. This is 2020, right? So this whole thing is very recent. So he's just talking about how he's got this non-pharmaceutical treatment. It's intranasal insulin, literally dripping the insulin into your nose. It passes the blood-brain barrier, goes into your brain, and goes to the areas of your brain that need energy, that are damaged, and it creates energy. And he's talking about how he wants to help veterans and, athletes out here, right? It's in Colorado, so you got a lot of extreme athletes. And, I was like, oh, hey. And I just shared with him a couple of the stories where I hit my head. And I said, so my point to him was, to make conversation and to say, I understand what you're doing and I appreciate it. And he goes, well, what happened to you? And I go, well, I just told you what happened to me, right? I fell. And he goes, no. He goes, what happened after? Because he knew, right? And mind you, I'd say I hadn't spoken about this, certainly not a stranger, in 20, 25 years. And I thought to myself I remember thinking, like, this guy's trying to help people. And if I can't share that with him, who am I? So I started telling him, I haven't had a full night's sleep in 25 years, and, on and on and on. And he's come in for a scan. He gives me this thing called the WAVI scan, which measures the energy in your brain. And it's a quick scan, but the results come out and he goes, okay, this is interesting. He says, you see this heart and there's two waves in perfect sync. That's your heart and your brain wave. And they're in perfect sync. He goes, we see that a lot with people who are very meditative and reflective. So I share, some of my meditative and reflective practices. He goes, okay, that makes sense. He says, see this red part in your brain? Because it was color coded. I said, yeah. He goes, the red indicates that part of your brain is in the perfect alpha state. He said, that's a great state for the brain to be. It means you're active, you're ready to go, but you're at peace, you're calm, you're level. I'm like, cool, I'm awesome, right? He's like, right, you're awesome. He goes, you see the blue part? And I was like, well, yeah, it's mostly blue. He goes, yeah. He goes, the blue indicates that part of your brain is dormant. It's not working. And there's zero energy going to it. He goes, that part of your brain that's not working is the part of your brain that regulates your emotional control. And for me, I could have walked out right then because I was like, okay, I'm not just a raging dick. I'm actually injured.
Yeah, the click happened for you.
Yeah. And so I was like, wow, okay, cool. And he goes, and what he said was, he goes, this injury is so bad, you should have committed suicide. He goes, that's the long and short of it. He goes, walk me through this process you teach people. So I walked him through, again, emotional awareness and everything that follows that. I walked him through the cold exposure and the breathing, why we do that, the physiological effect, the emotional, the behavioral effect. And he's like, well, you saved your own life. He goes, that's the only reason you're alive is because of the things you put in place, because this is so bad. And he goes, let's get you the rest of the way. And I'm like, what's the rest of the way? And he's like, well, let's give you a treatment, intranasal insulin. And it's weird because you start to realize sometimes how little self-worth you have for yourself. And without even thinking, I said to him, Doc, I've been living with this my whole life. I go, I'm good. I go, but you should make sure you help, the other people. So he goes, I tell this story a lot, Ron, and sometimes the emotions come out and sometimes I just roll through it with humor. So bear with me, right? It's very unpredictable how, yeah. So I said that to him and I was literally going to walk out and be like, cool. I'm just injured. And he goes, okay. His best bedside manner. He goes, but let me ask you a question. He goes, wouldn't you like to feel better? And I was like, yeah, I would. So he does a treatment right there, upside down, we're squirting it into my nose. You're upside down for 10 minutes. And he's like, okay, I'm going to get you a prescription of insulin and do this for, I don't know, maybe it was twice a day, once a day for 10 days, whatever it was. It wasn't a heavy lift. I walk out, right? My wife is picking me up. I get in the car and she looks at me almost accusatory. She goes, what went on? And I go, what are you talking about? What went on? She goes, what happened in there? I go, I got the scan. And, so I told her about it. She's like, no, what else happened in there? I'm like, what's wrong? And she goes, something is different right now. I'm like, oh, yeah, he did the insulin thing, right? And she goes, something's different. She goes, there is no heat coming off of you. She's like, something's different in the best way. It started to work immediately. I went back, I did the treatment. I went back, I don't know, a month later for another scan. And the long and short of it is, he's like, okay, you see in the first scan where you had like 1 megahertz of energy, whatever it was measured in, and now you have 39 megahertz of energy. And he was going through all the things. He's like, you see the blue? I'm like, I don't really see the blue. He's like, it's gone. I go, well, when's it coming back? And he's like, I don't think it is. He goes, and he was like, I've never seen a recovery like this before. And I was like, well, what do you attribute that to? And his response was interesting. He goes, I attribute it to the same thing that saved your life. He goes, Errol, the work you put in for 20 years, right, to try to get through. He goes, your body and mind and spirit were so primed to get better. Once we gave you that one catalyst, your brain exploded in energy. He goes, I bet you haven't thought about your process. And I'm like, I haven't. Because he asked me before, he goes, well, how often do you go through this process of how am I feeling? What am I going to do? I go every time I walk into a room. And he's like, that sounds exhausting. I'm like, that's why I have to take a 2-hour nap every day, right? So, yeah, so that was the recovery. Now, the end of it is, okay, well, where is this intranasal insulin? It's not FDA approved, right? I got, what do they call it? An off-market treatment, right? Whatever, something to say like, this isn't really an approved method, off brand. That's what they call it. And I got a call from a a researcher one day, random, out of the blue. And he starts asking, he's like, hey, I help with traumatic brain injury and, I want to talk to you. I'm like, well, I go, look, I'll talk to you all day, doc, but you obviously found me because I blogged about this stuff. I'm like, you obviously know I'm okay. I'm good to go. He's like, no, I'd like to talk to you about some other. I'm like, okay. So I said, call me tomorrow. He called me. I almost didn't take the call because I was like, ugh. But I took it. And he starts asking me all these very specific questions. He's like, okay, what kind of insulin? Well, I'm like, it was generic. And he's like, okay, what was the angle of your head and then what tool did you use to inject it? How long were you upside down? And I stopped him. I go, doc, I'll answer all your questions, and excuse my bluntness, who are you and what do you want? Yeah. He goes, well, I developed a patent on this. And he goes, you're the first human who I've found who's been through it. And I go, well, my doc says he has the patent on this. And he goes, well, let me guess, your doc is, and he said the doc's name. And I go, well, how do you know that? He goes, he calls us all the time. And he's asking about the research and stuff like that. And he's obviously implementing it. And I got quiet. He goes, I'm not here to get him in trouble. He goes, we don't care. He goes, we're doing the studies to get this FDA approved, and you're the only one who we know who's gone through it, and we need information.
Yeah, and proof of success.
Yeah, so they were like, so I was like, okay, cool. So I told him everything. He's like, I knew it. And so now I'm working now. It's a shame. This is the cure. I get people all the time coming to me and going, hey, I want to introduce you to this person who's trying to help people figure out PTSD and TBI. And I finally had to start saying, I don't need to meet that person. I have the cure. I need money to help continue to fund this study. I had to start saying it to people because I don't care what somebody else is doing. I got the cure right here. And it's weird. So I've helped them raise, I don't know, $200,000, $100,000. They need $2 million to keep this study going. And what I have found, I have literally spoken to, Ron, billionaires. And I'll call this guy out. The guy, Safariland Gear. They are like the primary holsters and, all the tactical equipment that law enforcement and the military use. Somehow somebody introduced me to him and said, you two should meet. I met him for coffee in Aspen. And, he was like, I don't know why I'm meeting you. The guy who introduced us said I should meet you. I'm like, okay, cool. And I'm like, do I ask this guy for business or do I ask this guy for money? And I'm like, money, because we need. So I tell him the story I just told you. And I'm thinking, mind you, this guy is a billionaire. He could go into his pocket, pull out the lint and go, here's $2 million, right? No problem. And I'm figuring this guy is in because he's got this look on his face. I'm like, okay, I got him, right? Because he knows I am the person who he makes his living on. And he's kind of looking at me. I go, what are you looking at me like that for? I didn't know what else to say. And he goes, Errol, if this was true, it already would have happened. And I go, what do you mean? He goes, if it was just insulin into the brain to cure this, we would know. And I said, I just told you they had originally sold the patent to a big pharma company 15 years ago, and they sat on it because they knew it was a cure and they're not interested in cure. So the guy has to do the whole thing all over again. I go, it is out there. And he goes, Errol, insulin isn't even a prescription drug. I go, yes, it is. He goes, no, it's not. I go try to get some insulin. I go, I don't know what to tell you. The guy basically accused me of lying. And he was like, okay, well, he goes, I got to talk to my doctors. I go, why don't I send you some research material? I go, why don't I get you on a call with the researchers? They can tell you everything. I'm just the pitch guy. He blew me off. I've spoken to several people like him. And what I've realized about people and their money, I'm beginning to think rich people are rich because they hold on to their money, right?
Yeah, I could tell you some stories about some people with some money that bought cars, and you're like, then fight you for floor mats, and it's $100, and then they put on their credit application $60,000 a month. I was like, you fought me for floor mats for $100? Like,
It's unbelievable. But so it is my mission in life to help get this money raised. And it's hard, but this is the cure. This is it. This will change the world. Because forget about Navy SEALs. What about the housewife who gets into a car accident and she goes to the hospital and they do a CT scan, which doesn't measure your brain injury. And they're like, you're fine. And she's starting to lose her mind, right? Because she's got traumatic brain injury. And now she doesn't know what to do. She's got 3 kids. What happens if she's a single mom, right? That's who
that you want to
it's
help.
for, right? So I know I've blabbered on about this. And we didn't
No, Errol, please, because
Yeah.
it's like, it's so important. Everything that you just said, and there's so much to unpack in it. Like, the other piece too is that billionaire from Safari Land Gear almost in a way was saying to you, which we haven't really even touched, is like what you did for yourself was part of the reason that the insulin piece works so well.
Yeah.
So when you combine that in terms of a cure for TBI with the insulin piece, like people still have to, in a way, people still have to do the work on their own in ways. Is that accurate? Like,
Ron, here's where it is. So yes. So, and I get people call me, hey, can you help I'm like, I'll do everything I can to help you. But here's the thing. Yes, the work ahead of time is the work, right? Now, I don't know. That was just his speculation as to why I had such an incredible recovery. There's no scientific proof behind that. But what I will tell you is this. I'm healed, right? I don't have those problems that I had anymore. I am, and my wife is the one who will tell you that, right? And that's all that matters. But I still exhibited many of the same behaviors because the behavior of getting mad over something for no reason became a behavior. It became how my brain was wired, right? Still acting overly emotional at things was a behavior. So my brain had become wired to this. So while I was cured, it took me a while to stop behaving that way. I had to rewire my brain, right? Neuroplasticity, you can do it. But it was like a whole new set of awareness and consciousness. Like, again, noises would bother me. People eating an apple, a carrot, like I said, it would drive me nuts. So my kid would be eating a carrot and I would instinctively want to yell at him to get out of here, go into another room. And I had to stop, follow my own process. I go, okay, do you really feel angry right now? Or is it just what you're used to doing? And I'm like, I don't care. The noise isn't bothering me. So I don't need to react. Right? So just because the brain is healed, you have still hardwired behaviors in your mind. Think about addicts. And, this is the other thing. I had a guy who I did a seminar and he came to me and he was a drug addict and he's in like California and he works with all these like where Eric Clapton went to go get dry ice. So you got to have like $1 million to go to this thing. And he's like, walk me through what you think this will do. And here's what I said to him. I go, the benefit I can bring. I said, first of all, the intranasal insulin will help. I go, there's no science behind it, but it's all the same. You damaged your brain. Okay. He's like, yes. I go, but what I will be able to help your people with is the after part, because they're still going to have behaviors that are similar to the behaviors when they were an addict. And they not even realize that they can unlearn that behavior. I go, that's where I'm going to bring you the value. Again, this guy, I don't know how much money he had, but he's like, I'm getting you with Eric Clapton and Bruce Springsteen because they run this place and they're going to want to hear this. And I'm like, let's go. Right. And look, I'm a big Clapton and Springsteen fan, but that's not why I was interested in meeting them. Because I was like, because they got money and they can help. They can, this is the ass that we need to move it forward, right? The weight. And this guy just ended up blowing me off, right? And I know he wasn't lying to me about what he did. And I'm like, I don't understand people. Like we just agreed this is revolutionary on every level. So people, I don't know. I don't know what to say. Now I'm not going to, but
I think to your point, like I believe just from my standpoint, it's revolutionary on just, you think about the regular everyday person and me, for example, like knowing emotional awareness and recognition, behavioral awareness, recognition, the guidelines for behavior, the planning process with SMAC, and then meeting the resistance, right? Your ice cold leader methodology and leadership process. It starts with that emotional awareness and recognition first for a reason. And like you were saying before, like a carrot, your son chewing a carrot could send you down the wrong direction. You think about somebody who might be addicted to smoking cigarettes, and there's a trigger, something that sets them off to want to go smoke a cigarette. In my own life, when I've quick to snap because something bothered me, it's because that was already built in me from my environment, my demographic, the way I think about things. And I started to break down since reading your book and being in proximity with you and learning from you through the time that we know each other. Trigger, emotion, think and decide, act.
Yeah.
Like the being able to stop yourself, take a breath and say, what just triggered me to react that way? Sometimes I recognize that trigger since I've been practicing this more. I recognize it after the emotion has already happened.
Yeah.
But then I'm at least all right.
Yeah, and that's fine. Look, it's tough because it's hard to do.
Yeah.
Right.
But what I want to ask you is tying that emotional piece to it. How does cold exposure, right? Because people think about the cold, they think about it's this tough thing to do, like get into the cold and you gotta, you gotta just grit it out.
Right.
How does cold exposure really translate into everyday life and leadership, and really also part one of the leadership process, handling your emotions? Can you walk me through that and the audience through that a little bit?
Yes, I'd be happy to, because it is the basis for everything. You can do everything correct to the right of an emotion, meaning make a good plan, right? All this stuff. But if every action you have is based on a negative emotion, anger, right? You're like, yeah, my plan was to destroy this person's life. And look what a great plan I have. Like, well, no, right? You failed right out of the gate with the emotion, right? So when I work with people, that's the first part we go through, right? My course is a Trojan horse. It's in the best way, because everybody expects one thing from the Navy SEAL, and when it's all based around emotional awareness, like, oh, I didn't expect this. And what I say with the cold exposure, there's a physiological element and there's a performance element. So from a performance standpoint, it's hard for people to get used to recognizing emotions. It's hard for people to even articulate the emotion they're feeling. And I know this to be a fact because it's what all my clients do. After a week, they're like, oh my God. So I say, how do you practice that? Right? How do you practice emotional awareness? You use cold exposure, cold shower, ice bath, whatever it is. And if your intention before you get in and during and then after you get out is to say, let me be focused on how I'm feeling, guess what? You're not going to have to struggle to find an emotion. You're going to have to struggle defining all of them because, oh my God, fear, anxiety, right? And the point I make to people is it is a drill. It is a drill to recognize and acknowledge an emotion. That's it, right? It's a skill. And it's a skill you can use anywhere. Okay, then getting in, that is a new emotion. It is panic. That is an induced panic attack. You hit the cold shower, you hit the ice bath. That's what happens. Panic. Okay, right? The system's the fight or flight system. Now, it's another tool to recognize we're so stressed. Everybody, people don't even recognize their stress anymore. This is another tool to say, this is what real stress feels like. That's stress. So now it's in your face, it's hyper. And now how do you move through that? Right? Then it's focus on your breath, only your breath. Let your breath start to do what it's meant to do, right? Activate the vagus nerve that serves to calm you down. The breath does it all for you. Now you learn to trust your breath. Okay? And the point of it all is you no longer have to be afraid or judge an emotion, right? Fear is just an emotion. Now you know that when you recognize it, you get to make choices. Before you get into the ice bath, I am afraid. Great. And what? And nothing. I'm gonna do this, right? You do it. Okay? It doesn't always get easier, but what you've shown yourself is the emotion doesn't own me. That is the performance part of using the ice bath and cold exposure as a tool to get through that. It is, if people go through my 8-week course, if they learn nothing else, they come back and go, I am forever emotionally aware.
Would you say that that's what's missing from like the mainstream leadership conversation that happens today? Because I feel like, to your point, like the emotional piece, like you got the quote unquote proverbial leader in a business. There's a lot of ego, in the C-suite level, and people like they don't want to talk and address those things. Would you say that that's missing in a lot of those conversations?
Well, it certainly is for clients, right? A lot of times they have a hard time with this. Now, some are closet emotional awareness and recognition people, like, I've been working on this, right? So that's good. But I think from the leadership space now, and I'm not judging anybody, I'm truly not, right? Everybody's got something to offer. I just happen to believe very strongly that the ice cold leader methodology, I'd put my shit up against anybody. Tony Robbins, Jocko, all the best, right? And that's not to say that I don't think they're not great, because they are. But what I see are gaps, right? And what my methodology does is fill in the gaps. So, for example, great leaders delegate, right? Well, no shit. How do I delegate? I don't know how to delegate, right? So something as simple as that, okay? To say, well, delegation, great leaders delegate. And great leaders keep it simple, right? It's one of Jocko's big things. Keep it simple. Yeah, but how? How do I keep it simple, right? And those are the gaps. And what I mean by that is, so how do I delegate? How do I keep it simple? Well, let's just check your emotion first. Okay, how am I feeling? Well, I'm about to go into this thing and I'm feeling insecure. Okay, great. And what do you do when you're insecure? I babble on. I just talk. And then I try to tell people how smart I am, right? Because I'm insecure that they don't think I know the answer, right? And now I overcomplicate things because I'm insecure that they don't think that I know what I'm talking about. And now the plan is very complicated. So just to tell somebody to keep it simple is not enough. People need to know why they overcomplicate. And at the end of the day, that example is you overcomplicate because you're insecure. And once you start recognizing your insecurity, you get and your intuitive action on that is to overcomplicate things because you want people to think you're smart. Okay. Now you get to make Now you have options. Now that you've recognized your emotion and what it leads you to, you get to work on a new behavior, a behavioral guideline of keep it simple. Now it has context. Now it has meaning. And it has meaning because it's applicable to you and you understand that it all derives from the emotion. So if you catch the emotion, you can now start making adjustments about
To the behavior piece of it.
to the behavior piece.
Yeah.
And recognizing, most importantly, because if the answer was, well, when I get insecure, I keep things really simple and succinct, and it always works out. My response will be, great, don't change anything. Trust your insecurity. Your insecurity is actually helping you. And now they're like, well, wait a second, it is. And now all of a sudden it's not insecurity. It's just when I feel this way, go with it because now I have confidence. So it needs to be specific. And what I don't do a good job at, because my methodology doesn't allow for it, is my marketing is bad because I can't, and I just, for some reason, so again, let's go to Jocko, again, who I respect, and I think he does a great job, but they've got their 3 tenets, like execute, prioritize and execute, keep it simple, and decentralized command, right? And I think there's one more. All great SEAL tenets, Navy SEAL tenets, right? And if you do those things, you will probably be in pretty good shape. You will make some improvements. My point, though, is what happens if you already do those things and you're still struggling? What do you do then? They are meaningless to you.
Yeah, they're just tenets. They're not an actual process that you can implement your day-to-day pieces in or the goals that you're looking to achieve based on behavior.
To figure out what is specific to you that you need, that's where my process differentiates itself. That's why I just can't go out there and go fucking do these 3 things, right? And it's because it's not that simple. Now, my wife runs all this and we've got advisors and they're like, you got to get over this shit because it's marketing. You got to get eyeballs. I get it. Okay. But it's a challenge that I have. But that's to your question, what's missing in this leadership genre? What's missing is what's needed specifically for the individual to get over a hump, to find an edge, right? Because I work with only top performers, right? Losers don't come to me. People who think they know everything don't come to me. People who are really good are like, this guy might have something else for me, right? Yeah. And so sometimes it's really hard to take a high performer and say, what are we going to work on? Not for me, not for the methodology, because I bring you through the process. I beat you down with how are you feeling? How are you acting on that? What are you seeing that you do that you are successful in spite of? And then, oh, there it is. Now that's our new behavior that we work on. And they buy in 100. And then the planning process, everybody loves, right? Because it's applicable. Like, holy shit, this is great, right? Yeah. That's what's missing. The specificity. Now, I get it. Nobody wants to listen to my specificity, right? They want a quick hit. I've got to do better at that from a business standpoint.
Well, they just want instant gratification because they live in a world of instant gratification. But if you're trying to be a high performer, a top performer, none of that happens overnight. Nobody builds these businesses in 30 days. Like, this is just the facts of life. So, like, I think setting that precedent for people, like you're saying, you have to have some kind of plan for behavioral success before. I think a lot of people want to focus on the goals and the results, but they don't want to focus on the process. And
it's all about the process. And what I tell, when it comes to behavioral guidelines for behavior, right? What behavior are we going to decide to work on based on what we've seen, observed about ourselves, based on the emotions that we're feeling, right? Oh my God, I just lost my train of thought. That was crazy.
No, you're just talking about what was missing and the gaps, and then how people don't want to go through the process. They want that instant gratification of getting the results.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And the process, right? So what I tell them is we found something. Okay. The point was not to find something. The point was to show you the process to find something, because this is the process. Now, when you're looking at your team, You do the same thing. Can I identify some emotions? They look this way. How are they acting right now? Why are they acting? What do I need from them based on what I'm seeing? So when you then tell your team, here's what I've observed. We do A, B, C, and D. And it may be because we don't prioritize. We just do shit, right? Whatever comes to mind, we just do it. And so when you say, here's an example, when we're nervous, when we're scared, we just do the easiest thing. And that's where it's hurting us. Everybody's paying attention because they're like, oh shit, is he talking about me? Right? And then when you say, so because of that, we will focus on a new cultural behavior prioritization. That will be our focus. I will be asking you, what are you prioritizing and why? Why is it more important than this? And people will buy in because you've just told them what you've observed based on when they're feeling a certain way. And now they're like, oh, this guy's got it. He's right.
He's dialed in. He's also paying attention. He's aware.
He's attention. And so we will prioritize and you will not get any pushback. And so that's right. Like you said, it's the process that's important, right? If you behave in this way, will you get better? Yes. Great. How do we figure out which way to behave?
Right.
The process.
Yeah. And it's crazy too, Errol, because it's like, I think that to your point, people are missing that process piece and they want that instant gratification. You know, we live in that world of, you know, the glorified hustle and the constant movement, but really like we got to be able to make space for the stillness and strategic thinking. And especially for, you know, the people that feel stuck, right? Like high performers have to do that as well because they can achieve higher levels. But you have people that, you know, I always felt that about myself. Like this is Great American Underdog. You have people that are the underdogs in their life that do have talent, that do have hardwired abilities that, you know, God-given abilities that maybe some other people don't have. But yet so many of those people, my dad used to always say, the worst thing in the world is wasted talent, right? Like they end up not doing anything with it because of maybe external forces, maybe their own emotions that they can't get over. So, you know, as we're wrapping things up here, Errol, like, what do you say to the people out there that, you know, might be feeling stuck, whether it's in their job, their personal life, mentally? Like, what are some immediate actions those people take maybe to apply the process to their lives and to get over those humps? Because, again, they feel like that they are either falling behind or things happen so quickly and they're just not having enough time, quote unquote. You know, I guess what would you say to those people that are really truly struggling to get over those humps to unlock their abilities or the life that they want?
And you know, this was the first time I was ever asked this question. I got nervous because like, oh shit, this is it. This is what they're going to ask me, the one thing to do, and it's going to be contrary to everything. And I was like, wait a second, no, that's not true. Because one thing to start doing, emotional awareness. Start being hyper aware of what you're feeling every day, every instance, every time you walk through a door into a new situation. Just acknowledge it and then recognize what you do with that. And then you will automatically start to make adjustments. Okay. That is the start, right? That's it. Okay. That, in my view, that is the only, if you did nothing else inside of the Ice Cold Leader methodology, do that because it will compel you to start making adjustments. The other thing that I want to close on that point is, and it's a very important thing, the emotion is not what matters. You are allowed to feel how you feel. It is not about not ever being afraid again. It is not about not being insecure again. It is not about not being angry again. You can't, by and large, help a lot of those things. They happen. That's not the issue. The issue is recognizing it and deciding what you're going to do with it. That's the issue, right? When people start to realize, I don't need to feel silly because I'm insecure. I just need to not let the insecurity own me. I need to not act on the insecurity. I need to do something else. What else? Anything else.
So it's like giving yourself, like you say, that psychological safe zone to feel the way that you feel. And
Yeah.
then after you recognize how you feel, why do I feel that way? Like, what's the emotion behind the emotion, right? And
Yeah.
then next, what am I going to do about it, or what can I do about it to make a
Yeah.
positive change?
And the other thing is, right, the emotion behind the emotion is important, right? I'm scared. Why am I scared? Because I'm insecure. Oh, shit, there it is, right? Whatever it is. The one thing I do tell people, because they'll say, well, I'm going to a therapist to try to figure this out. And I say, look, I'm not a therapist, even though sometimes I play one on TV, right? If you know, and then people will tell me, like, you're more like a therapist right now, Errol. Like, yeah, because sometimes we need somebody to talk to and run some things by. But what I caution people, I say, look, go to your therapist, figure out if it was your bad dreams or you didn't get hugged enough by your mother. And I don't say that facetiously, right? Maybe that's why you feel the way you feel today. Good. But here's my warning. What happens if you don't get the answer? What happens if your parents are deceased and you can't go ask them questions to confirm some of these things? What happens if the answer is just not there? What? That's it? So what I say is, even if you find the answer, you still have to recognize the emotion and decide what happens to the right. The left is not near, what's happened to the left of that emotion is not nearly as important. It's not worth exploring. But again, what happens if you can't find the answers? That's it? You give up? No. I'm angry. I have no idea where this anger comes from. I don't know if I was beaten as a kid and I just don't remember it. I don't know if I was sexually abused. I don't know anything. But what I do know is right now I'm pissed and I'm angry and it feels like it's out of control. What do I normally do with that? Cultural awareness and recognition. I don't like that behavior, that intuitive behavior. What behavior am I going to work on? I'm going to work on walking away. I'm going to work on keeping my mouth shut. I'm going to work on asking questions. Whatever it is, it's really all about recognizing it, what happens to the right.
Yeah. So just again, just being able to make those adjustments based on the recognition and awareness. I think that that's probably the biggest point, like, just from what we're talking about here. And then the practice of it, like using the ice bath, is the way of practicing that recognition every day, whether it's the ice bath, whether it's a cold shower, or even like you say, like dipping your hand in some cold water, just facing something that's going to make you uncomfortable to a certain extent, and then recognizing how you feel about it to be able to move forward. And I think that whether you're leading a team or you're just, again, like everyday life with your family, things of that nature, people that have suppressed feelings from their childhood, of whether it was, like abuse or something like that, or maybe the home wasn't uh, always peaceful, and you didn't know what to expect. I think all of this can be applied to everyday life, business, leadership, and I thank you for sharing it, Errol. What I want to ask, just as we close this out, is number one, being that you've had TBI and you've worked very hard on bringing awareness to it to get some funding around it. How can people support that TBI research and funding efforts? Even on a day to day, is there things that people can do
Yeah,
in order to do that?
there are, and I appreciate that. So we are coming up with I'm so old, a code. What is that thing? Right?
Coupon code, QR code,
A barcode, right? Whatever it is, right? Where you take your phone and there it is, where you can donate. Now that's going to be on our website. We don't have it up yet, okay? But we're going to get that up there. But more importantly, if you're like, well, okay, you don't have that up yet, but I can help. Just get in touch with me, icecoldleader.com, right? That's the website. Contact us. We respond to everything, right? Obviously. And if you're like, hey, I can help you raise some cash, or I've got some ideas, you just get in touch with me. And even if you want to just say, I've got 20,000, what do I do with it? Just get in touch with me and I'll get you in touch with, right, the researchers, and we'll get it all squared away. Nobody's giving me money, right? Make sure you get it to the right place. So that's the first thing, right? icecoldleader.com. If the stuff through donate will come up soon enough, but until then, just contact. That's the first thing. Yeah.
Okay. And then if somebody wants more information, Errol, on the Ice Cold Leader methodology, they want to buy your book, they're a business owner that wants to improve. They lead teams, how do they, same thing, icecoldleader.com?
Yeah, icecoldleader.com, and that's the best way to get in touch with us. Um, and get all of our resources and what we have to offer and things like that. And it's the standard stuff, right? We've got our 8-week course that's virtual. That's our bread and butter. We do in-person events anywhere from a half day to 3 days, right? You've got a corporate event, like, I don't know what to do with it. Let me run it, because we will implement this process into what you want to do as a company on the spot. And obviously keynote speeches. But yeah, anything, icecoldleader.com. And you get all the information. That's the best way to contact us. We're primarily on LinkedIn for social media, right? We used to be on Instagram a lot. We're like, maybe Instagram's not where we need to be quite as much. We're going to go back to that a little bit, but LinkedIn is a good place to find. We post pretty regularly on there to get a feel for our content.
Awesome. I appreciate you, Errol. Just as we close out here, the last question I have for you, just being everything that we've talked about today, being a SEAL, being the FBI, being in special ops, being cured of TBI, what's the biggest lesson you think, if you had to put a pin in it, what's the biggest lesson that you feel all of these experiences that you've gone through that you use to apply to everyday life that can also help the audience that's listening?
Yeah, there's two, if that's okay. The first is a quote. God will not look you over for medals, degrees, or diplomas, but for scars. Do not expect any greatness without scars. Embrace the scars, right? And then with that, the second part is stay in the game. If you're staying in the game, you're winning, okay? If you're staying in the game when your scars are being applied, you're winning. You can do it, right? And this is now where I've come full circle on the rah-rah stuff. Listen to me, you can do it. Embrace the scars, okay? And stay in the game. Just don't give up. And if you do that with a good heart, good mind, good spirit, you'll come out the other side. And that's a fact. You just will.
I love that, Errol. I appreciate that, because I'm going to carry that with me throughout my day and on a go forward. So I want to thank you again for being on Great American Underdog. You've been so gracious with your time, and I think everybody listening is going to get a ton of value from this episode. And if for everybody in the audience, this has been another incredible underdog story, real life stories of strength and success from real life underdogs. Errol, thank you again so much for your time. If anybody wants to contact Errol, I will have his links down below in the description of this episode. You could visit icecoldleader.com. And I definitely would advise anybody listening to buy his book, Ice Cold Leader, Leading from the Inside Out, if you want a little bit more detail on what he does and how he does it. And then definitely, if you're a business owner, you need to be reaching out to him, because he will not only change the way you view things as a leader, but he will help you grow as an organization and grow your people and grow your future leaders. So, Errol, once again, thank you for being on.
It's my pleasure. It's an honor. And anything for you, Marvelous Ron Marvel.
Appreciate you. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.